right, MFP community, we are with our next very special award-winning now guest, Meg Snead of the MFP community. And yeah, we have a lot of good things to talk about with Meg today. She's not just a now very committed, we'll say long time progressing here MFP member, but she is a mother to her two lovely daughters that her and Micah bring to the gym. She is we'll say an entrepreneur now, right? Even though she has a history of a very, very important job title that we'll talk about. And she's a plant guru. Now, we are in the presence of Joe, the gardening guru, now bird feeder guru.
Expanded.
So Joe's expanding his horizons, but we are in the presence of the true gardening guru, plant guru here, Meg, which we'll talk all about here. But again, Meg's rushing around today. She's got some things going on in her lives that we are very privileged to have her in our presence. So we're just going to take our 3 breaths, just ground us, and then we'll get into the fun conversation here. So that's all 3 of us and everybody joining. Just take that moment to be present, be still, listen, observe, and just honor that this moment in time, we're letting go of the past, forgetting about any future circumstances, and living into that here and now. More importantly, just providing gratitude for all the opportunities that we have as a community, and to have this opportunity to learn, to listen, and to grow from all of the good wisdom that we're going to be provided here with Miss Meg Snead. So let's take our first breath in the nose. Hold your breath. Long, slow exhale. Again. Hold. Let it out. Nice controlled exhale. One more. Deep breath in. Fill all the way up. Hold it for 3, 2, and control the exhale. Whew. Awesome. Joe, passing you the mic. Give us a quote.
Before I start, just make sure you refer to Meg by her proper title as Master Gardener.
We'll get to that.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that, but Master Gardener, possibly still in training?
Right now, I'm still in training,
but
yeah.
Master Gardener. All right, anyway, so I have a quote from Melinda Gates, says, "We all want to have something to offer. This is how we belong. It's how we feel included. So if we want to include everyone, then we have to help everyone develop their talents and use their gifts for the good of the community. That's what inclusion means. Everyone is a contributor, and if they need help to become a contributor, then we should help them because they are full members in a community that supports everyone." So I chose this quote, one, because I wanted to kind of made me think of Meg, because you are someone who is very much just like a true leader in the community. We were just joking around before the podcast about what I call the Meg cinematic universe, and that is like, like if someone's in the Meg universe, like Meg as like, everybody, and like you are someone who is truly like embodies that sense of like inclusivity and like empowerment, and you've done that throughout your career, and you do that like as you show up here at MFP, and I'm sure as we'll get to in your entrepreneurial endeavors. So I don't know, it's something that I think too it's good for us to think about at MFP, like looking at each and every member here, like what do they offer and how can we help them contribute, So good little flow to get us started today.
Meg, you got any comments on Joe's quote of the day?
Well, right before I walked in, I told Joe I got an email that I think I helped the Department of Agriculture get rid of 50 truckloads of applesauce that they have in a storage unit in Harrisburg. Through a food recovery organization in Pittsburgh that is one of my clients. So sometimes, as part of the Meg universe, you can repurpose tons and tons of applesauce.
Well, actually, you know what? That's something that like I get down deep rabbit holes of thought, and I go like, wow, what do we do with all the food that we produce sometimes? And like, that makes me just feel at ease, knowing that
People
at
are
least
working
we have
on it.
applesauce being put to good use, especially for when it comes to, people who maybe are underserved and don't have that opportunity to get some applesauce in their life. So thank you for that. I want to start off with, Meg, you're an award winner now, at least within the MFP community. But have you ever won an award before in your life? I have a feeling the answer is definitely yes.
I have, yes.
Okay. So in terms of all the awards that maybe you've won in your life, you don't have to say MFP to make us happy, but is there any award that stands out to you in your life?
No, that one for sure makes me the happiest because it's the most relevant to my current life. And Micah and I think, really do well in competitive environments. So we like play sports really well together. So CrossFit, tennis, like these things that we like, pickleball that we like to play together. I'm super proud that it's reflected, that it's like a good positive thing. I would never want, to be in a relationship where you're like, where it's not positive in the gym, right? It feels really positive. So to see that recognized is great.
Yeah. And for those who weren't available at the holiday party, we're there. We do our yearly awards, and so the Couples Award is a iconic award that we've had it pretty much every year. And again, I said to the community, we are truly blessed to have just a very family-oriented gym space that where a lot of husband and wives feel comfortable coming together as a team. So, and you guys totally embodied that award on so many different levels, which we'll start getting into. But you mentioned, this is something Joe and I talk about a lot, just like the idea about getting outside and doing, things that aren't necessarily just CrossFit, right? You use your fitness to, something that's functional for you. But take us into a little bit of your background when it comes to maybe this competitive side of you and sports. Like maybe what's this whole journey for you in terms of like growing up, and how did that become embodied into, how you think about your sports today?
So I was a swimmer growing up primarily. I played other sports till like 8th grade, and then my swim coach said, if you want to be serious about swimming, you should dedicate to swimming year round. So I did. So I graduated from Radnor, just down the road, swam for them. Didn't swim in college, went to a Division I school, was not really interested in that experience, that level of commitment. So stopped swimming and really didn't have much of like I played like intramural softball and always found ways to kind of stay active. Moved to Colorado, spent a lot, you can't help but spend a lot of time outside, out there. That's the huge benefit of being out there, is like 300 days of sunshine a year. So hiking, skiing, all of that stuff, I really immersed myself in. At some point, I was doing spinning, a lot of spinning with I found a gym that did a Metal Monday class that I really liked. So I was doing that. That was around when Micah and I got married, but never really found anything consistent until CrossFit. And honestly, that was a friend of ours who lives in New York, who's doing CrossFit for a couple of years. And I was like, what are you doing that you look like that? She just looked so good. And she was like, CrossFit. And so I felt like I had the fundamental skills. We had been having babies, and so it wasn't really the time. But as soon as Sloan was born, I knew we were done having kids. And as soon as I got that 7 or 8 week postpartum clearance, I went and joined a CrossFit gym.
Nice. Okay, so that's a good turnover. Yeah. Going into CrossFit right away too. Well, yeah, you had that background.
Yeah, I definitely, and I wasn't walking in never having gone on a run or something like that. Right. And same for Micah. He joined right before me. He would joke that he got there first, but I just hadn't been cleared from the doctor yet. But we both were like, okay, we're entering a phase in our lives where we need to take better care of ourselves, and we need to show up for our kids in a different way. And I think they love it here. They love the gym environment. They ask every Saturday, are we going to the gym, right? It's just there. So I think that's a really good example for them. I will say, just back to the outdoorsy, Colorado piece, Micah and I would say that we are the most over-prepared, under-skilled, outdoorsy people on the planet. Like, we have all the gear, right? All of it. We registered at REI when we got married, but we go full in, and we are never prepared for what is coming at us. So a little bit like CrossFit, the first time you try it, like, what the hell is this? But.
So how has your mindset around, you've been doing CrossFit for what, 8 years?
Yeah, seven or eight
years now. How has your mindset around CrossFit kind of evolved from like just beginning to probably that inevitable, like going, like, I don't know, everybody goes so hard for that like first couple of parts and they buy all the gear and then they kind of hit their stride. So like, how has your mental approach to CrossFit evolved from, you know, when you started to where you are now?
It's so interesting because the kids were so little when we started. Like, Sloan was a baby, and she's seven and a half now. So she's my frame of reference for how long I've been doing CrossFit, right? With the exception of the pandemic. Remind me what your question was. I lost
Just your evolution.
Oh, yeah.
From
My mindset. Yeah, I went into it really competitively. Like, and I am very competitive only with myself. Like, I do not care what the person next to me is doing, but I really care about my own ability. And I think that's why Micah and I do so well, because he does not have a competitive bone in his body. So he's like not worried about that. And so it's not in conflict to me. So it's changed over time. I mean, this gym is very different than the previous CrossFit gym we were a part of, just in terms of the programming. A lot of the people are the same, funny enough, but I love I think Kevin Cornefell, when I first started here, he said to me, I've never done the same workout twice. And I was like, oh, that's really cool, because that was not the case in my previous experience. It was also much more driven around like your results. Like, I don't even look at Wattify because it's not where my mindset is now. Now I've shifted more to like, and I've also, and we'll talk about this as part of my business, but I hired a business coach who has changed my mindset on everything. And it's all been mindset work. Even around running, like I was like, I hate it. And I hate it because I'm bad at it.
You know? Run a marathon with me.
God.
Oh, God.
But
Not there yet. Not there yet.
But my point was like, okay, the part of me that is like, doesn't want to do things that I'm not good at, I have to try and tackle the things that I'm not good at, right? Because she was like, well, do you expect to get better then if you just complain about it and avoid it? I'm like, fine. So even the mindset around running, I practiced a trick here one day where we were like out on the path or whatever, and I was like, this sucks. It's like, or you can say to yourself, like, you know, you can try and work on something else. And I changed my mindset, and by the time I was done, I was here and it was over, and it was like, oh, I see what she was saying now.
God, you hit on so many good things. I'm trying to think about where I want to go from here. But the first was acknowledging your swimming abilities, because that's one of my first clear memories of Meg, because there were a few summers that we did a little swim event over at Caracong. And you were like the first one that came up to me, because I was kind of like teaching people how to swim, which, by the way, is not a real thing. Even though my wife is a very, very knowledgeable and great swim coach, she decided to just throw me into the fire. And Meg was very nice enough to say, if you need anything, you just let me know. And Meg was basically my demo and all those good things. And so I appreciate that. But I also acknowledge where your mindset is in terms of like how you are very driven, maybe just how you were designed as you grew up and how your work life and how you translate that to the gym. I also wanted to touch on being very over-prepared, because I was, in terms of Micah, let's just say, for example, I was very fortunate to have Micah part of one of my retreats. And let's just say that his tent was like bachelor pad, next level tent. I mean, like, it was just for a few days, but like, it was lit. I mean, it could have been, we could have had the whole retreat in his tent basically the whole time. So, I I want to go through a few different things, but I do want to touch on, since we did talk about this couples award, and I just want to talk about the relationship with you and Micah, because I really feel like that accelerates our community and accelerates your growth together. And you guys are kind of like these polar opposites, right? Where, not saying that Micah isn't a very driven person, he just is driven in his own unique way. And again, he just brings this very goofy, but yet also like laid back, like, hey, like the results aren't the number one thing. We're here for something greater than just like, having to just put results on a whiteboard. So tell us a little bit about this relationship, of how you guys grown in terms of like how you started, we're grown into with CrossFit, and how it's continuing to develop, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, when I met Micah, I knew like he had a girlfriend. And I was like, all right, I mean, we can wait her out.
Okay.
Wait her out a little bit. So we waited her out, and then we were friends for a while, and then we started dating. We were talking about it the other day, more than 15 years ago. So we met in Denver, and I wanted to like get married and right away. He was coming off a heartbreak, so we waited a couple years. We got married. When we made the decision to move from Colorado to here, I never thought we would come home, or I would come home. He's not from here. And then Maeve had emergency surgery at 11 weeks old, and we were in Denver, and I was like, I would like my mom to be standing next to me if this happens again, so it's time to go. So we came back here, and Micah is from the rural South, you know. I mean, he
Go Gamecocks.
Go Gamecocks. We're both Gamecocks. That's actually how we met. I was the president of the Carolina Alumni Association, and he called to ask where we watched football games, which was at a bar called Don's Mixed Drinks in Denver.
And not to interrupt you, but just so you guys know, every time you see Micah in class, he's usually wearing South Carolina Gamecocks gear on when he's working out at the gym, just for reference.
Yes, my dog was named Lou Holtz when we met.
Oh, no. Okay. I love it. He's a legend.
Yeah, he is a legend, yeah. So anyway, we moved back here, and he's really embraced being in Philadelphia. I think he laments this time of year always that like we're moving south because the weather sucks and he hates it. But fast forward to the spring, and he starts to really like it. And we'll also go down south between Christmas and New Year's to see his family and like kind of restore his southern roots a little bit. But I think we have got two beautiful girls. They're 7 and 10. And it's mind-blowing like how fast they're growing up. Maeve is like up to here on me.
Oh, yeah.
It's wild.
If you guys have been members for like 3 years now, and just like seeing that 3 year, like that's the growth spurts are definitely hitting.
Yeah. And I mean, she's swimming now for LMAC, right? And she swims 5 days a week. And so I think in even the relationship, like instilling that in them is really important. Not that they have to exercise every day, but that you need to get out and move your body. And I think we set a very good example for them in that way.
I love it. No, and I think that's really important. I mean, Joe and I are going to be parents here very soon, and that's really one of our greater missions. And I think that's really what a lot of CrossFit couples here at the gym really find motivating, is that like they're not just doing it for themselves, they're doing it for the whole family, and just setting an example of what it means to just do something for yourself and for your health and overall well-being. So yeah, we definitely notice it, and I think that's really a big theme within our community. So. But I do want to come now back to this mental, not necessarily competitive, but this driven side of you. And I want to touch it from a few different points. Maybe one in terms of like, from like the origin, like maybe some of like you growing up. And then I want to maybe start dialing that into your previous work of like, we're, pretty big deal. All right. So let's start with a little bit of an origin story of like, just in terms of like how this driven mindset was instilled in you, and then let's start to progress that.
Well, so I mentioned I grew up in Radnor, which is not like a real place in the world, and I knew that pretty early on. Just kind of looking around like, can't be that like everybody drives like an Audi to school, right? I mean, and my parents grew up in Radnor. My grandparents went to Radnor, so it is a legacy basically. But we were a regular middle class family, surrounded by incredible wealth, right? That I always just felt like there has got to be something else out in the world, and I would like to find what that is. So I went on a long college tour with my mom. I wanted to go south. I looked at the University of South Carolina, and it was like, yes, this is where I would like to go. She said, you can't go any further. So I locked in there for the next 4 years. And honestly, if I think back to like the moment where I knew what I wanted to do, I was a government major, and I sort of didn't do great in school until I got to college and started to like find things that I actually cared about. Like math was not one of the things that I cared about, but you know, history I did care about. So I took a class my junior year called Vietnam in the 60s, and the professor was teaching it from the perspective of being at Berkeley during the 60s. So more about the protest movement than about what was happening in Vietnam. And I remember my dad came to class with me to shadow, and he was so horrified that he was spending money on my like liberal education. But anyway, you know, it comes around. And so that professor took us on a class field trip in Columbia, South Carolina is the capital. And they used to fly the Confederate flag above the State House in Columbia. And there were large protests to bring that flag down. And he said, we're gonna walk over and see it. He pulled my friend Jen and I aside, and he was like, the two of you are not allowed to go anywhere near the pro-flag side of the rally. We were like, what? We just wanna see the crazy. He's like, nope, I'm not bailing you out of jail later. This is just an exercise in class. Like, absolutely not. But that was when I was like, there are people like walking down the street. There are KKK members walking down the street. And that's wild to me. And we live in a country where you can exercise your voice and your right to say whatever you want. But that was sort of the moment that I was like, this is interesting. Like, politics are interesting, and how does it influence vulnerable people? So then I had the opportunity to study abroad in Quito, Ecuador. And that's a place where you will see like abject poverty at levels that, for me, I was like, I live in a country where we have unlimited resources, and yet people are just as vulnerable as they are in this third world country. And how is that possible? And how do you close the gap on that? So I finished school. Long story short, landed in Denver and had some friends that were there, and that would begin. I was there 12 and a half years, so that was a long stint there. I went to I got a job working for an organization called Colfax Community Network. They serve kids and families that live in motels along Denver's main strip. And they did after-school programming and a food pantry. So I really struggled with that like direct service component, the idea that I wanted to bring all those kids home to my one-bedroom apartment at the end of the day, and like that's obviously not doable. So I had the opportunity to testify in front of the legislature they were tearing a bunch of those motels down, and I was talking about displacing the families that live there, and I thought, oh, here's the intersection, right? Like, these are people who don't have a voice, but I do, and so that's what I can do to really like become an advocate. So I went back to grad school. I got a master's in public policy, and I really kind of learned my way through politics. I worked on a political campaign to establish a lobbyist gift ban in Colorado. I was a really popular lobbyist after that. And that was funded by the governor, who's now the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis. So then I finagled my way into a job at the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless as their public policy manager, and I spent the next 7 years in that job. And Maeve was born while I had that job. Micah came to work for the coalition at a point. But so I was their state house lobbyist, which Micah would always say, don't tell people that when you work for a homeless services organization. Like, it doesn't translate. But I had an incredible opportunity to influence a lot of policy in Colorado at the state level and at the city level. A lot of policies around criminalizing people who are homeless, like not allowing them to sleep outside, that kind of stuff. No panhandling laws, that kind of thing that just like restrict people's dignity to exist on a street corner. So I spent 7 years there, and actually I learned, and this is very wonky, but Colorado was an early adopter of the Medicaid program. Medicaid is the nation's health insurance program that serves vulnerable or low-income individuals and people with disabilities. And they were an early adopter, and they were rolling out their expansion and testing it on all the people that we served at that organization. And so I felt like, if you're gonna do that, you better get it right. And so I learned the Medicaid program from the ground up. And when I came here to Pennsylvania, Micah actually got a job working has had a street outreach at Project Home in Philly. And we were living at my parents'. Maeve was like 15 months old. And I was interviewing for jobs, and somebody offered me a job at the Department of Human Services in Harrisburg. And I was like, that's crazy. I can't go to Harrisburg. My parents live in Villanova. I didn't even know Amtrak went to Harrisburg.
Yep, it does. I was surprised where Amtrak went when it started.
I learned it very well.
Yeah.
So that was in 2015, and I spent the next 8 years in Harrisburg. Under Governor Wolf, I had a number of different roles, but I started as a policy specialist working on Medicaid and mental health and substance use policy, and then I got scooped into the governor's office, and then I became his policy secretary, which was just wild because that's when COVID hit. We knew each other at that point. So I had purview over the entire policy agenda when COVID happened. So when we shut you down, that was me. That's me.
Now we all know.
We all know.
We're privileged to be in that.
Meg
I'm
Snead.
honored for that. I'm honored.
It was a wild time to be alive, and
100%.
I reflect on it sometimes with friends. Like, we play a game called Veep or Real Life. Like, did that happen in the show Veep or in real life? And it's usually that it happened in real life. Like, do you remember the time that a truck turned over with a bunch of plague-infected monkeys on the turnpike? I'm like, I remember that pretty clearly. That was like a crisis day, or we had to make a decision during the pandemic about whether or not to refuel a nuclear facility. That was one of those things where it's like, I hope I'm not the expert that you are looking at to determine whether we do that or not. But I had this wild job at the height of state government, and then the governor said, hey, why don't you go run the state's largest agency for a while? And so I ran the Department of Human Services, where I had started as a policy specialist. And for reference, that's the country's largest state agencies. There's 16,000 people that work at DHS. Their budget's $50 billion annually. It was a massive entity to step into and be like, hi, I'm Meg, and I'm the boss now, and and try and establish some sort of credibility. But everything that lives in the Department of Human Services, from child welfare to intellectual disabilities and autism services to child care regulation to Medicaid, all of that makes me tick on the inside, like from such a nerdy, like policy way. And so when the governor was termed out in 2023, I jumped off on my own and started my own consulting practice, and it was terrifying and completely supported by my parents financially, by Micah from who was like, I believe in you and you can do this. But I really just kind of went from being like the primary breadwinner with the 24-hour-a-day job to like, I work for myself now.
Well,
go ahead, Josh. Say it.
You could go first because I have a thought, but you seem to have one.
I just want to comment on a lot of things here before we get into another question, because one, I was just completely just like in awe with your story. So that was by far, I mean, we've had wonderful guests, but like just hearing you talk about this progression of where you went from with your just finding a passion. And what really, really stood out to me was your passion started from this greater idea of like service. You saw, and I think this is really important for the story to even from the origin for people to understand, is that there was a moment of compassion, there was a moment of non-judgment and acceptance. Obviously there was like judgment in terms of like what you were seeing in terms of discrimination and all these things that really like fueled your fire. But then, you know, you got these other experiences where you're seeing a lot of poverty, a lot of underprivilege, a lot of people who are not getting these potentially same experiences that you've maybe had in your life into getting you to where you are. And also now really starting to put together the soul contracts with you and Micah, with knowing where like your deeper purpose is for being together in this lifetime when it comes to doing the work that you both are doing. Because you guys, we'll talk to Micah another time on the podcast with his mission, but he's very passionate about providing service to those who really need it the most or don't have these opportunities. So that's part of your story just really, really sits well with me in terms of like really getting to know you as a human being, but also just seeing this progression with you in this. I mean, you know, you get this perspective that not a lot of people are ever really going to understand, right? Especially when it comes to the political point of view or agendas or creating all these policies that like there's so much that goes into it. And you know, now getting to know you a lot more with some of the work we've done together, knowing that like you've made such a huge impact, but you know, knowing that there was something more for you to maybe lean into and tap into. So yeah, just really hearing that story, just have a lot of gratitude for it because I can really understand where the passion is coming from, and it's much more than just like doing something like, you know, people sometimes work because they want to do something for themselves, but there's something much more to the service to others and the service to like all life. Like you guys do a lot of work and care when it comes to like environmental concepts, which is huge. And so, yeah, I just really wanted to note on those few things as I'm just kind of like in awe with your story and just like really seeing like how it all came out. Because there's some things I really didn't even know just yet that are just like, I get it now. I get it. So, Joe, you go good for your comment here, brother.
Yeah, and I think I was going to say something similar to Marco, and I think that what really stands out to me is just like you're, like even from a young age, is like having curiosity. Like you were mentioned, like you knew, like you were self-aware when you were young, like growing up in Radnor was such a limited perspective, right? Like, but the thing is though, like not a lot of people are like that. Like people, like, I mean, whether you grow up in Radnor or, for example, like I grew up in like Northeast Pennsylvania, like the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area, like people there like get stuck in their mindset and they don't like have that open curiosity to not only just not to think about others, but to want to help other people. And I think that, you know, I could relate to that in a similar note, like growing up in Northeast PA, like knowing like, man, there's a lot more out there than I mean, you're familiar. Do you have Northeast PA ties?
Yeah, my dad's from Hazleton originally.
You're another Hazletonian. Another Hazel. That's right.
Oh, man.
Another Hazletonian on the Just Show Up podcast.
I was so happy.
Another Hazletonian. I knew it because Costello.
Yeah.
That's a Hazleton name. Anyway, but you know, as you know, like not a lot of people have that like curiosity and that empathy, and you can say that for people who live. I mean, this is a huge country, right? I mean, just think about culturally. Like, I always say, like, it feels like we have like several different countries in one, and like having someone like you that like you're thinking about not just yourself, but not even just the people around you, but like knowing that there's something much bigger at play. And I think that that's what really stood out to me. I don't really necessarily have a question, but shout out to Hazleton.
We're expanding that because with Dr. Chris Lab moving next door, he's a Hazleton guy. Well, here's how I want to transition because we're going to talk about CrossFit in a little bit, but I still want to stick on some of this journey because I think this is where, with our connection together, is where we started to really start growing over the past year, which was, again, you were making this transition from this work with the governor and everything we were doing with your policy work and human services, obviously a huge deal, big, secure job, but a lot that takes you away from working on yourself potentially. It's time consuming, there's stress, there's so much going on. You're the head, you're the person making all the calls. And then you decide to make this shift and change to basically becoming an entrepreneur, doing this whole journey on your own and starting back from ground zero. Like you were saying, you had to, be supported. I can relate. I know what it's like. I get it. And that's how entrepreneurialism works. But where our journey started was when I had a breathwork retreat. At basically this time last year is when we started to really connect, because for this time for you last year was where you were starting to go through a lot of just these mental struggles or changes, and just a lot of, these initial fears and worries and things that just come with, starting a business on your own. And obviously there are a lot of life, family, and stress and changes. And so we've obviously opened up a lot to each other within these retreats and in these circles about, like doing this concept of inner work, and actually now going a little bit more within to find the answers of like, what's my next step for, my journey as a human being, but also just to like be a better human. And how do I actually find these answers from within to maybe get me into a kickstart of something new? So I'm really grateful for that opportunity. I think that's really where we start to pick up. But tell me a little bit about, and I'm not going to talk about the retreats or anything like that. You can always ask me about yourself, but tell me, what did you learn from the experience, and maybe how did this start to progress you in your work as an entrepreneur and getting you started for an amazing 2024 year?
So it coincided with me getting to know Yolanda, who's my business coach. And I met her at the bus stop. She's got 2 little boys. They're on the same bus as Sloan. She's a single mom. She lives in the apartment complex behind us. And she and I went to Harrisburg for the day for something. I can't remember what it was, some conference. And it was before we were working together. But we were in the car on the way back, and she was like, I think you're stuck in a hell loop. And I was like, what's that? And she was like, I think, because I was having, the anxiety of just going to Harrisburg after I left Harrisburg was really bothering me. Like I was really struggling with a lot of what was bad about my experience there. And I couldn't get out of that mindset. Like, oh, the governor's going to fire me. He can't fire me. You don't work for him anymore, right? Like, but I was having this dream. I'm still having a version of this recurring dream. And I am a huge believer in therapy. I always have been. I've been in talk therapy for most of my adult life. Micah and I do very proactive couples therapy every other week that is hugely beneficial for us. And I'm so thankful for all the work that he contributes to that too. Like that is really something we have to come together on, and we do, and it is like the best thing for us. So Yolanda, banana boat. So Yolanda was like, look, I think that you are not able to see what was good. Because she's like, what I saw when we walked into the Capitol is that you're like a celebrity. And I was like, oh, no, I don't. I'm like sweating through my outfit. I need to get out of there. I'm having like a trauma response to the work. And it was at that moment where I was like, she was like, I can help you. Like, if you let me help you, I can help you. And I didn't know what a coach did. And it's mindset. It's literally all mindset. And it's about rewiring what's in my brain to like turn negative experiences into positive ones. And I think, and we just did a review recently because she also has these book club that she started. It's called This Is Not a Book Club, but there's, the mastermind. There's 2 other women in it. One's in Fort Collins, Colorado. One's in Ithaca, New York. They're my best friends now. I've known them for like 6 months. But the amount of work that we have done together has been tremendous, and it's doubled my income in 6 months. So that coincided with like the start of like something has to change. I cannot grind my teeth out of my mouth, right? Like I have got to figure out a way to deal with this stress, and I have something right here that I can tap into to do that. So my therapist strongly encouraged that breathwork retreat. It was hugely beneficial to me, just to be able to like say that you're anxious out loud to other people and have them not be like, oh, really? And help you work through it. I mean, I feel like I made lifelong friendships there in 3 days. Kristen's my twin flame, you know, so like, yeah. So, but it is 100% about doing the work every single day of like journaling, which I'm not particularly good at, but like recognizing the things that I'm grateful for. And what Yolanda would say is like, she wants me to get paid for just walking into a room and being me. And I'm like, do people pay for that? And she's like, yes, with your like level of expertise. And I think what has changed is that I believe it. I didn't believe it before.
Yeah, and it's always like, I feel like I found like with myself, and other people could probably relate, like there's the moment when you realize like you see what you want to do, what you have to do, what you should do, but it's so hard to make that like final like click to do it. You know, like all the signs are there, the universe is throwing everything at you, but like sometimes you just need that push. You know, you just need that push to like actually act and actually do something. And it's awesome that like you found that through Yolanda and the breathwork retreat, and that like, you know, where you're at today is super exciting. I don't know if you want to like get into any details about like the growth of your business, or
so my business is hugely, so it really focuses on connecting mission-driven organizations to the government that serves them. And by that I mean like leveraging dollars for, I have had a really front row seat to government perpetuating problems that we have solutions to in our communities, right? And a personal, on that personal note, my sister has 2 girls. She lives in Wayne. Everybody's happy and healthy before I start this story. When the second one was born, about 5 months later, she experienced postpartum psychosis. And we learned very much the hard way in my family about the total lack of infrastructure in this country to support women with behavioral health issues connected to their pregnancies. And so I started asking people I had access to, I was the governor's policy secretary. I could call the head of any health system I want. There's no programming, right? So what we learned was she spent 6 days in an inpatient setting being stabilized. That was really important. And then was discharged into a system that is largely figure it out yourself. And not only figure it out yourself, but good luck going home to your family where you've been away for the past 6 days. So I started asking people in my Medicaid office, like, okay, well, they have prolific mom-baby units all over the world in other countries where they value maternal health outcomes. It's abysmal here. And what is it that they have that we don't have? Because last time I checked, we have everything, right? And somebody said to me, we don't know from an insurance standpoint how to pay for the baby to keep the mom and the baby together. And I was like, okay, well, great news. It's not rocket science. So we're just gonna sit here and figure it out. And we did. And now West Penn Hospital in Pittsburgh is opening the first 6-bed unit, mom-baby unit, first of its kind in the nation.
Wow.
As a result, and that's really, I mean, that's their baby. It was just me coming to the table and supporting the idea, and from a Medicaid standpoint, like, how do we make it work? But that's what I'm doing for my clients now and this is what Yolanda has helped me figure out, right? As she was like, they don't know that they need you. Like, they need you to tap into the Meg universe, right? Like, they don't know.
Meg universe,
you know, like a great example of that when I was just starting out was a friend, Kate Cronin, if you remember her from from Mainline. She is on the board of the Penguin Library, and she said, we're building a new outdoor community reading garden. Do you know where I should go for state money. And I was like, have you asked your state senator? That's who I would go to. And she said, no, I don't know her. And I said, she's my friend. I'm happy to call her and bring her down here.
I know somebody. let me check.
Yeah, no problem. And 2 weeks ago, she wrote them a $141,000 check for the new community reading garden. So,
awesome. That's great.
you know, so that's the type of thing. So a couple weeks ago, Yolanda and I went to was right after the election, we went to the Pennsylvania Women's Conference, and we walk into the convention center, and she's like, go find your clients. And I'm like, what are you talking about? These people are selling like just scarves and jewelry and stuff. And she's like, look a little deeper. So I came across an organization that I just put a proposal in front of yesterday, actually, that called Operation Warm. And they're a Pennsylvania-based organization that does coat donations for kids. And they've gotten the attention of the Philadelphia Eagles they've launched a shoe line and a partnership with some company that develops sports bras that gets sports bras to kids in need, which is really cool. And so when I approached them and was like, do you get any support in Pennsylvania? They were like, no. And it's like, what? You know, I know so many people that would want to give you money.
Yeah.
And she was like, we have $1 million line item in Ohio's budget. And I'm like, but you're based here and you don't have any money here? Can I help you with that?
Yeah.
So that's the stuff that I'm really leaning into now. And I'm finding it to be wildly successful to like go after the thing, to lean into what I know, like here's a problem I can solve and how I can help you do that. And so I'm really enjoying it. I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm like maxing out on my clients and because I have this idea, and I have another wild like idea of creating I do a lot of work where I spend time in Harrisburg, like helping people facilitate a conversation with an elected official because they're really scary and intimidating, even though they're really dumb and never the expert on anything. So like my job is to be like, you're the expert on CrossFit. You go in and talk to them about what they can do for you. But like, if I'm not there or physically in Harrisburg, I'm working on creating like a Meg in your pocket that you can like, you could like virtually.
Meg in your pocket. There's a universe, but there's a pocket version.
You know, like.
Love it.
It's some sort, I don't know what it looks like yet, but like some sort of like virtual role play or whatever, because that is the stuff I can do, is help people talk. They're not scary. Like legislators don't know what they don't know, and they have resources to give you, and so they can help solve problems if you ask them.
You know, it's really amazing to see this progress. I mean, really, this is like this is a lot of progress in a year's worth. I mean, really, just like seeing you start this last year, seeing where your mind was at, loving seeing this, how you had this support with, again, another solo contract with Yolanda that's come into your life to really give you that tool to help you manifest. And that's really the big thing I was thinking in my mind is like, you are now learning how to become a pure creative manifester with the work you do. But again, manifesting works, there's a formula to manifesting. We talked about this on a few episodes, which is about first is passion and inspiration, right? You have to really have a deeper sense of purpose. That's a spiritual purpose that feeds into, and again, it's not the self. Everything that you're doing, every policy that you're helping, like you see that there's a greater purpose to like serve somebody else, serve a group, serve a community, serve some greater source of inspiration for, again, and it provides you obviously this joy, compassion and love and everything that you're doing. So seeing that growth and obviously seeing how like you're taking these thought processes, because like you mentioned that you're learning how to manage mental processes much better because you're training your brain, you're training the mind to actually become quiet, so that way you're getting the actual download from spirit to go into this reality of like what your true purpose is in your life. And that's why like you're getting these opportunities, getting these clients, getting all these amazing things that are happening, and it's no surprise, right? I mean, we see it here. Like, I mean, it's great to hear all of like that progress that you've actually that's tangible that you've made and created. But like we've seen it, and that's kind of one of the reasons why that became a part of your award, right? For you and Mike, is like you guys have also made significant progress in the gym. And like, we've seen the physical, but like I can see the between the years. I can really see like how you're processing hard things. So I do remember you in the past, like with came to the running or doing challenging things, there would be that like questioning, like, oh, I don't want to do this. This sucks. Or it's like, I have this opportunity to grow. It's not necessarily making it easy, not making the challenges and obstacles, you know, more palatable in that moment, but you can now process the light that's at the end of that tunnel once you achieve that, or put yourself in the situation that as at least attempting to do hard things. So we've totally noticed that. And when it comes to manifesting and creating, as we start to get closer to the end of this, one thing that we noticed you created was this new ability potentially. I don't know if it's newer, but this whole gardening concept.
Yeah,
Joe's a little jelly.
know
Joe's a little
about it.
jelly because he's on his baby roots. But take us into, is this a new thing
Relatively,
that,
yeah,
okay.
since the pandemic.
Okay, so take us through of like how that maybe started to become another skill of yours that you just started to, again, just move forward into your life as you're making other positive changes.
So I had this wonderful assistant when I was in Harrisburg. Her name was Crystal. She texted me while we were here, so she's still very much in my life. But Crystal had the greenest thumb of anybody I've ever met. And I had this huge like corner office in the Capitol that was unbelievable. It was perfect for plants. So she filled it with plants. And then the pandemic hit, and she was like, you have to take them home. My husband's gonna kill me if I like bring home all of the plants that we already have a house full of plants. And so all of a sudden I was like, wait, no. I don't know how to keep any, like I can't, I've tried, but like I don't know how to keep them alive. And so I just had like sort of something to start with, and it was like, okay, well, it's the pandemic, so like I can remember to water plants because I'm staring at them all day, right? And like that's really all you need to do is water them and like give them food, and if they don't like the spot they're in, move them.
It's easier said than done, everybody. It's easier said than done.
It is,
Okay.
yeah. And
I've tried.
And I started playing around in my garden outside, and my mom has always been a really good gardener. I think I mentioned that I was competitive against myself only, but that's also true with my mom and my sister. So I started to be like, oh, well, I think I can do that too. Because she'd be like, oh, you can keep that alive? That's interesting. You've never kept anything else alive. You know, it's like,
That's a good competitive
support.
mindset. Yeah, that's good.
So some of it was that way, but then they started like growing and producing things and doing cool stuff, right? And it was like, oh, I can lean into this if I can like keep something alive. And everything has a life cycle. So like somebody told me once, they only name their plants after dead literary characters. So when they die, they're not like sad. They're like, it was expected.
Yeah.
You know, you were
That
going to
makes
say
sense.
that person
That
was
makes
going or that character was going to go. So yeah, I then decided at some point last year that I was going to apply for this Master Gardener training program, which is just not what I thought it was at all, by any stretch. And I think Micah would tell you, probably with the breathwork retreat, he would say the exact same. I know he would say the same thing. He's like, you will just dive in with both feet. Like, what's up? What are we doing? You know, and it's like, I don't really have most of the details. I don't really know what I'm doing, but like, dive in with both feet.
So good. That's so good. It kind of goes back to like what Joe was saying earlier, though. Like, that's part of the open-minded, curious part of you that's like willing to try something new. And just touching on plants, I mean, I think really for you, that's a deeper spiritual part of your journey that you can continue to unfold, because really, you know, we don't really look at plants for the majority of our population. We really do need to, as a collective society, really start tapping into this. Is something I've been working on, is just like really appreciating nature. And if it's like starting with a relationship with plants, that's a great start, because they are very conscious and alive beings that we are a collective part of. Same with animals. And I've learned a lot of this from my wife, Stephanie, with her cats. Like, I've always been a cat lover, but like how she has this love and compassion and just understanding of animals, because they are very conscious beings, and souls and plants. But not to go too much off on a spiritual tangent, but I think it's just really something really cool to touch on.
Yeah, I love when like a smoke tree. I think I've been talking to you about a smoke tree.
You love the smoke.
Yes,
Yeah.
because somebody told me once, they were like, it does interesting shit more than twice a year.
Yep.
And I was like, so I want that in my garden, you know? And that's kind of been my approach to gardening, and like all of my plants is they're just to like hoard them, basically. I have so many of them now.
Well, let's hear from the gardening guru.
Yeah.
What do you got to say about all this, gardening guru?
Well, what I will say is that Meg is a very, very talented gardener, and Meg has a very beautiful garden. And I mean, I just appreciate your like relationship with plants, right? Because it's such like a
It's for my mental health,
yeah,
100%.
and it's like truly a labor of love. Like you do it like you have the right approach, and I think it's just honestly like a reflection of how you approach everything in life. Like you're not just in it for yourself. You're caring about other things, and you like to nurture and see things grow and help. And I think it just like, you know, your relationship with plants, like it makes sense. And yeah, I mean, with this master gardener thing, you're going to know everything about soil pH.
Oh,
and
I'm
you're
probably going to not
basically-
finish this
you're gonna-
program, but that's okay.
You don't have to finish it. You could.
Yolanda
but-
is telling me I'm tolerating it right now, so
Yeah.
we'll see how that goes. But I will say, like, even my love of like plants and the knowledge that I've like gained over time, it has even translated to like being able to grow food is really cool and teach the kids. But like at the end of the day, when I have had a hard day or whatever, I want to put a murder podcast on and put my hands in the garden. Like that's what's going to relieve my stress, you know, more than anything else. So, you know.
Next step, bird watching. Next step.
Yeah, just so you know, Joe
got sucked into the Instagram ad
Joe's
for the
new
bird
actually.
feeder.
Joe's new saying to everybody now is, "Do you want to see my bird?"
Yeah, because I have birds.
You know how long birds live?
How
Like
long?
really long time.
Really?
Like 30 years.
Hell yeah. They're moving in.
Don't get Joe all excited about his birds now.
Town. Bird
Joe's bird is really excited, everybody. Well, I love that too, and it's just the one word that keeps popping up in my mind for you is just like grow. This is just like a continuing theme of actually like your life cycle of this work that you're continuing to like unfold. And it's almost like it started unexpected. Like you weren't really trying to like put yourself in these really deep positions, but like you were growing, and then all of a sudden you go out of that to where like you're again, like I said, manifesting in your own way, and you're growing and creating in all these different unique ways, which is really cool to see, and obviously importantly for the podcast within the gym. And so one of the things as we start to wrap up is, you know, our mantra here is this Just Show Up podcast, and we talk about, you know, Just Show Up as a whole being concept. It's really not just about like showing up for the physical exercise, but we talk about the mental, emotional, spiritual. And again, you've really started to embody all that so well. But I want to touch on, if you want to quickly touch on the story, because it's really interesting, and it's about just showing up is also a form, I think, when we related on not too long ago, was we did a talk at the local library, at Ardmore Library, about what freedom means to be, what does freedom mean to you? And I had to follow up after Meg, and she had a great script, and I didn't have a script, and I got punked. Wrap it up. But she had an amazing story, and I think really the whole idea of just showing up is a way of finding freedom and control in your life that's really meaningful. And you had this great story about Walter, right?
Randall.
Oh my God, Randall. I'm sorry, Randall. I wrote the Walter story on our
I was
thing
like, what
here.
is that?
Randall's story, homeless,
Yep.
right? Homeless individual. And obviously you already talked about like your perspective of the homeless community, because one last thing before you go into it, what I really wanted to touch on earlier, and I forgot when I remember, is that like most people in our society would look at individuals that are homeless or underprivileged, and they wouldn't think twice, or poverty. Most of us, the lack of compassion we have as a collective society, and I really just admired that about your story, and obviously about what you're talking about with Randall, with this idea of finding freedom. So do you mind touching on that for me real quick?
So I met Randall in 2003, probably. When I was working at Colfax Community Network, so that organization that serves the kids living in motels, he was friends with the executive director, who's also still in my life. And Maggie, I mean, it was a very, very grassroots organization. Like 6 of us were doing the work. Like I think my job was fundraising, but it was also driving the van to the, food bank if you needed to drive the van. And so I met Randall, and he's the type of guy who would like come and just park himself in my office, and I'm like, oh God, like Randall's here again. Yeah. But he was so persistent in, like, he was on the board of the local homeless organizations, and this is a guy who was experiencing homelessness himself and was finding every opportunity he could to engage civically about the issue of homelessness. And I found that really interesting. And so we've developed a very close friendship that was not easy over the years. I mean, he suffers from a lot of mental health issues, and it is hard for me to understand, even despite working in this space most of my life, why people would choose certain situations. I understand it very deeply. And I will just say, to just touch on Micah for a second, like the thing that I appreciate the most about Micah is we're so connected on like an intellectual level that we don't even sometimes have to like speak the words. We just know what the other person is thinking and can play off of that. And so Micah knows Randall well too. But when I got the job at the Coalition for the Homeless, Randall parked himself in my other office downtown, and we started tackling some stuff, including the governor at the time had proposed cutting their cash assistance program, which was like $175 a month, which, if you're a really bad drug addict if you're subsisting on $175 a month, but that was the perception of what people were doing with those dollars. And so Randall and I organized a campaign where we started talking to those elected officials about, okay, so even if you think that this person is spending that $175 over at the Ardmore Park beverage, right? That's still going directly into your local community and your local economy. So if you take those dollars away, that's what this means for you. And I was like, it unlocked the kept trying to pull on their heartstrings, right? Like homeless kids, and they're like, we don't care. And then it's like dollars in your community, and they're like, oh no, don't do that. And so he taught me those things. Like you can't just come with the same old argument, and you have to make friends with your enemies too. Like you can't, you have to be, it has to be all hands on deck. So we were successful in getting that program restored. Wow. We were not successful in, we did mobilize about 10,000 people to march on the city council and the mayor's office around an anti-camping ban that is still in place 10 years later, and as predicted, has horrible outcomes associated with it. And Randall is still kicking it out there. He sent me a Facebook message around, I actually asked him if it would be okay if I talked about him in the story. And he sent me a picture of himself wearing a reflective vest, registering people to vote, and it's like, he's still doing his thing. And he's still living in I think now he lives in a motel, but he's bounced around. And I just feel like for me, that story was about how valuable libraries are to people who are unhoused, right? Like being able to put your stuff down, being able to just sit quietly, use the bathroom, maybe, access the internet, whatever it might be, very basic necessities. And libraries are hugely valuable to our community in that way. In fact, in Denver, there's a huge street outreach program that is run out of the library because of how many, and also largely probably because of Randall.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow, I just, what if we were all like Randall in terms of how we thought, like the whole idea, like make friends with your enemies, like how powerful that is, at least to this, I really feel like that's how we continue to evolve productively as a society. It's not necessarily just coexistence, but how do we continue to come back to this heart center of acceptance, non-judgment, compassion and all these little details, everything that really hit in your story. So I really appreciate it. That was probably the story of the night. So that was great. So as we start to wrap it up here, I want to come back to the ground level with CrossFit, and are there any other things in terms of just continuing to relate with our community? Like, how else do you feel like, is there any other things that CrossFit is really in the Just Show Up mantra? Is there anything that has allowed you to continue to feel a little bit more whole outside of the gym? Whether if it's work, fitness, life, family. Obviously, we know you play tennis with Micah, and you guys are pickleballing now.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay, a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it seems like it's all continuing to relate to outside resources. So any tips or just anything you want to touch on there?
I think Micah has said this before, but when we came here from where we were previously, neither of us were really wanting to invest in like a new community, feeling kind of burned from like a previous community and post-pandemic and whatever. And I think what you have built here is incredible, and this community extends so far beyond the walls of this building. And we used to say like, oh, our gym friends are coming over. And finally it was like, they're just our regular friends. They're not our gym friends, there's no distinction. They're the people that we hang out with. So, I think Just Show Up, like, I love this place, and it becomes, it's not a chore at all. It's totally something we look forward to and like build into our weeks. And I've never taken that approach to exercise before. And even watching Maeve, like with her swimming right now, it's like, I can see her being like, for real, I just have to like swim up and down the pool for hours on end. And like, if you want to do something more interesting, that's totally fine too. I get it. You might be a little naturally inclined there, but other than that, you can try something else. But yeah, I mean, I think like anything else, just the idea of like building a community like this and the foundation that it gives you. Like, I lost my dad in April, very unexpectedly. Given all the work that I've been doing and like the evolution, I could be a puddle on the floor, but I'm not, right? Yeah. Because even my mom, Rhonda, who lost her dad on the same day that I lost my dad, we got tattoos together. And my mom, she's like, your father would hate that. I was like, he's not here to judge me. It's about me. But like, even just being able to do that, this place is incredible. So yeah, so as long as everybody else keeps showing up, I will too.
Well, very grateful for you, Meg, and the MFP community is better because of you. We're very grateful for you.
Thank you.
I love having you and Micah around. You guys are the best. So just appreciate you. Very grateful for you, and you're the best.
Thanks
I
so
appreciate
much.
it.
Yeah, this is definitely a PR on our podcast. I think in terms of our length, this is well worth the listen to, and just obviously that expression of gratitude. And one thing you mentioned on, especially the vulnerability of your whole story was really powerful. I think again, this is like more of like how we continue to open up as a community together. It's just to be open and be respectful of listening. That's why we do our gratitude circles, right? And you said about, I forget what you just were saying. It was talking about basically the outside of the walls, right? Like, and that was my final message of my speech on Saturday night. It was really about like, you guys have no idea of like how much as a team here we are continuing to make this impact just by being who we are, and these people who are really doing things that are taking action for our health and our connection to others. And I really think that's just a great message for everybody to understand is, I wrote it there, right? Even the smallest act shape the fate of the world, even though you're doing pretty big acts. The little things too that you're doing here, Meg, and the little things that Joe and I and all you guys are doing are making a big difference, and we're gonna continue that good work. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Awesome podcast. Can't wait for you guys to just listen to this thing. And I guess Joe and I are going to follow up with this by ourselves that next week. So we'll do our best. So
I can send PD in.
Okay. I love it.
Love it. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. All right. Love you guys. Love you, Meg. Love you, Joe. All right.
Peace.
See you next week. Peace.